Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Session number 12 of Injunctions on Family Law. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah amma ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa halul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Waiting period for a divorce, that is Iddat. A. Iddat is the name given to a period in which divorced woman or a widow cannot remarry. In fact, it is meant to make sure if she is pregnant, and in case of pregnancy, the would-be child shall be the legitimate offspring of the former husband. There is no iddat for man. Quraan says in ayah 2-228, women have the right relative to their obligations, but men have an advantage over them. The advantage is that there is no iddat for man. He can marry another woman immediately after divorce. B. The iddat for a divorced woman is 3 menstrual periods, as said in ayah 2-228. The divorce comes into effect after the menstrual period comes to an end. This is for the sake of certainty in the counting of Iddat, as said in ayah 65-1. C. For old women who have reached menopause, or for those who do not menstruate on account of a disease, Iddat shall be 3 months, as said in ayah 65-4. As stated in verse 2-28, the period of Iddat normally is 3 menstruations, but such of your women as have attained the age of menopause, for them the prescribed period is 3 months. And for those who have no courses on account of the disease, it's the same. D. Iddat for a pregnant woman is until the termination of pregnancy, as said in ayah 65-4. For those who are pregnant, Iddat is until they deliver their burdens. They should declare in the event of divorce that they are pregnant, as said in ayah 2-228. Nor is it lawful for them to hide what Allah has created in their wombs. E. There is no iddat for woman who is divorced before sexual intercourse, as said in ayah 33-49. O you who believe, when you marry believing women and then divorce them before you have touched them, it is not required of you to count the iddat in respect of them, during which period the responsibility of their sustenance lies with you, and the woman cannot marry any other husband. So give them suitable provision and part from them in a goodly manner. Marriage is a contract. When you find it difficult to carry out the contract, end it in a lawful manner. There is no need to create bitterness, as said in ayah 2-228 to 2-36 and ayah 65-1 to 4. F. Iddat for a widow is 4 months and 10 days, as said in ayah 2-234. If any of you die and leaves his widow behind, they shall wait for 4 months and 10 days for second marriage. And when the iddat ends, they are free to make a decision about themselves according to law. They have the right to do so. There shall be no blame on them that they have done this way or that way. Remember, Allah knows all that you do. In case she's pregnant, there is no separate injunction in the Quran for it, but it can be deduced from the injunctions regarding divorced pregnant women that their iddat shall also be until they give birth. G. During the period of Iddat, the responsibility for providing daily requirements and shelter shall be on the man, and its standard shall be the same as during the normal life. It is said in Surah Talaq, 65th chapter of Qur'an, as said in Ayah 65-6 to 7 and 2-241. Let the woman live during Iddat period in the same style as you live, according to your means. Annoy them not so as to tease them. And if they are pregnant, you have to provide their sustenance until their delivery. Sorry. And if they suckle your offspring for your sake, that is, if you cannot make any arrangement for the suckling, and by mutual consent it is settled that she herself shall suckle, give them their due recompense and enjoin one another to do good. And if you disagree, another will suckle for them. In determining the scope of providing sustenance to divorcees or compensation for suckling, be considerate of the financial status of the husband. Let the man of means spend according to his means, and the man whose resources are restricted, let him spend according to what Allah has given him. Allah puts no burden on any person beyond what he has been given. It is a difficulty. If a difficulty arises for the man on account of extra expense, a relief can be obtained according to the divine law. The court shall keep this in view. But if during this period the woman commits an act of immodesty, the man then is no more responsible, as said in Ayah 65-1. O Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when you decide the cases of divorce, tell the people that matter of iddat is of great importance. It must be accomplished adequately. For this, it is necessary that an accurate count of the prescribed period be kept, so as to submit totally to the injunctions laid down by your sustainer, as said in Ayah 2-228 to 36 and Ayah 33-49. During this period, do not turn out the divorced woman from your houses, as said in Ayah 65-2. During the period of Iddat, these are still their own homes, nor shall they themselves leave without a proper excuse. However, in case they are guilty of some open immodesty, they can be turned out of the house. These are the limits laid down by Allah. Anyone who transgresses the limits of Allah, besides doing wrong to others, he also wrongs his own self. As stated above, the woman should not leave home and go to some other place during Iddat. But if conditions are not favorable to stay there, she can stay at some other place by permission of the court. This is our deduction from the Quranic verse, in case it is said in Ayah 4-130, and if they separate, Allah will render both free from want out of His ampleness, out of His ampleness. Allah shall make arrangement for the fulfillment of their deeds, that is, the society established under the divine order shall shoulder their responsibility. H. For 1 year's provision of daily needs and residence, the husband should leave a testament. But if before his the widow leaves of her own choice to some other place, this responsibility of the late husband comes to an end, as said in Ayah 2-240. Those of you who die and leave widows should make a bequest for their for their widows for a year's maintenance and residence. But if they leave the residence of their own and make some other arrangements for themselves according to the law, there is no blame on you for what they do with themselves. Remember, the divine law is exalted in power and is based on the wisdom. I. During Iddat, a widow is not allowed to marry another person, but there is no restriction on discussing the possibility of marriage in the meantime. As said in Ayah 2-235, there is no blame on you if you make an offer of the betrothal or hold it in your hearts. Allah knows that you would fancy to marry them, but do not take any hidden promise of marriage from them. Negotiate with them in the recognized manner, but do not resolve on marriage during the period of Iddat, and always remain conscious of the fact that Allah is aware of the ideas that flash across your mind. You should know that Allah does not want to inflict any hardship on you by means of these limitations. The object of these restrictions is to perfect your society from the injuries of wrong attitudes. He does not get angry by your mistakes so as to entangle you in strict laws. This is done by tyrant rulers, not by Allah. If during Iddat or afterwards a woman intends to remarry her former husband, do not stand in her way, as said in Ayah 2-232. When you divorce women and they are nearing the completion of their iddat, do not prevent them from, from marrying other former husbands if they mutually agree to do so in the recognized manner. Note, this does not apply after the third divorce. 17. Suckling. The Holy Quran does not specify the period during which the mother should suckle the child. The husband and the wife can mutually take a decision subject to the requirements of the child health. However, the Quran has said that it takes 2.5 years for a mother to keep the fetus in her womb, followed by the suckling of the child, as said in Ayah 46-15. We have enjoined upon man to be gracious to his parents. In pain did his mother bear him, and in pain did she give him birth. The carrying the child is to his wearing is a period of 30 months. Even animals take part in the upbringing of their offsprings, but later on, this grown up offsprings do not even recognize their parents. Thus, the man is asked to rise above the animal level during his life. One of the demands of the human life is that he should treat his parents with the benevolence. His mother bore him and gave him birth with difficulty, which she experienced day and night. This continued not for a day or two, but it took at least 30 months from pregnancy to weaning. As said in Ayah 2-233 and 13-14. At another place, the suckling period is described as 2 years, as said in Ayah 31-14. As regards a divorced woman who carries a child in her lap, the Quran says, 1. The father of the child shall give the mother recompense for suckling the child, as said in 65-6. And if they suckle the offspring for you, give them their recompense and take during mutual counsel together according to what is just and reasonable. If any of you feels that arrangement is heavy on him and her, arrange for some other woman to suckle the child. 2. Though the period of suckling is 2 years, but if by mutual consent want to reduce the period, they are allowed to do so. During the period of suckling, the expenses of food and clothing shall be provided for the women by the father of the child. Standard of this maintenance shall be according to the financial position of the father. For so doing, it ought to be kept in mind that neither the father nor the mother are put into difficulty for the sake of their child. If it is thought advisable that the suckling can be given by some other woman in place of the mother, it is permitted, as said in Ayah 2-233. If in the case of a divorce the wife is if in the case of a divorce the wife is suckling a child, the mother should give suck to their offspring for 2 whole years. If the father desires to complete the term, but he shall bear the cost of their food and clothing on the prescribed terms. No person shall have a burden laid on him greater than he can bear. The court ought to keep this in mind. The mother shall neither be treated unfairly on account of her child nor the father. If, however, the father dies in the meanwhile, his heir shall be in charge in the same way as had been decided by both of them. On the matter of weaning, if you both agree on prematurely weaning and make alternative arrangements, there is no blame on them provided the husband pays the settled compensation to the mother. Anyhow, you should always adhere to the divine law and keep this reality in mind that Allah's law of requital oversees what you do. For this, neither observe the law as a mere custom nor try to evade it. 10a. Custody of children of divorced parents. There is no specific injunction in the Holy Quran as to who will have custody of the underage children after the separation of their parents. The court can decide on it according to the prevailing circumstances. The principle that ought to be observed in this case is that neither the father nor the mother shall be put to unnecessary hardships. And interference can be drawn from this rule in the light of verse 2-233 described above. To achieve this objective, the Islamic government shall also decide as to who shall bear the expenses of the children till they reach the age of maturity. 18b. Comments on custody. If father does not want, baby cannot be under mother's custody, as said in Ayah 2-233 and 65-6 and 7. And the mothers should suckle their children for 2 whole years for him who desires to make complete the time of suckling. And their maintenance and their clothing must be borne by the father according to the usage. No soul shall have imposed upon it a duty but to the extent of its capacity. Neither shall a mother be made to suffer harm on account of her child, nor a father on account of his child. And a similar duty devolves on the fathers here. But if both desire weaning by mutual consent and counsel, there is no blame on them. And if you wish to engage a wet nurse for your children, there is no blame on you, so long as you pay what you promise for according to usage and be careful of your duty to Allah and know that Allah sees what you do. Al Quran ayah 2-233. Lodge them where you lodge according to your means, and do not injure them in order that you may strain them, may straighten them. And if they are pregnant, spend on them until they lay down their burden. Then, if they suckle your baby for you, give them their recompense and enjoin one another among you to do good. And if you disagree, another woman shall suckle the baby for him. Let him who has abundance spend out of his abundance, and whoever has his means for subsistence straighten to him. Let him spend out of that what Allah has given him. Allah does not lay on any soul a burden except to the extent to which He has granted it. Allah brings about ease after difficulty. Al Quran, ayah 65-6 to 7. Ladies and gentlemen, we will continue on injunctions on family life. This session ends here. I want to keep the learning sessions short. Let's pray from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us that wisdom and that striving to learn Quranic laws and Quranic injunctions upon our lives, and gives us the courage to apply these rules and laws and these commandments on our lives, our societies, countries, and world as a whole. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be our best guide and protector, and He bestows upon us what is best suited for us. Ladies and gentlemen, take care of yourselves, your kith and kins, near and dears, and environment as a whole around you. Till next session, Allah Hafiz.